progress.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. I congratulate you for great occasion of Eid al-Ghadir, and may Allah inshallah grant all of you and me inshallah the light of Walaya and Risala. These two cannot be separated from each other. I mentioned one hadith about who are the true Shia and companions of Imams, and then inshallah we will continue our discussion with the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. In Bihar al-Anwar, volume 65, page 166, hadith number 17. Allami Majlisi Razwanullah Ta'ala alayhi quotes this from Rijal al-Kashi, one of our important sources of Ilm al-Rajal, about biographies of the narrators of hadith, is Rijal of Kashi. There is a hadith عن داود بن فرقد قال سمعت أبا عبد الله عليه السلام يقول. He says, I heard Imam Sadiq saying this: إن أصحابي أولو النهى والتقى. Truly my companions are those who have aql and taqwa. فمن لم يكن من أهل النهى والتقى فليس من أصحابي. So whoever is not one of the people of intellect and piety is not from my companions. So to be a true Shia, a true follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, needs taqwa and needs to be rational. If we are not yet wise, at least go by wisdom which is available, at least go by reasoning. And reasoning always requires to be acting differently. If you act the same way in all circumstances, this is not wise. It's like a doctor who gives the same prescription to everyone. It's not possible. Or you are a repairman. You want to repair all the cars in the same way. It doesn't work. Aql requires to be sensitive, to acknowledge differences and to take time to understand what works better in every circumstance. Okay. Now let's go to our discussion about Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. The first thing that we need to discuss is how Imam alayhi salam faced the challenge of ghulat, zealots, or those who were exaggerating. Exaggerating in what? In the position of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They raised them above human level. So this was a kind of current, and from the second half of the first century it emerged among some of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, sometimes among people who were very candid, who were simple minded, who were, loving Ahlul Bayt. They were emotional. They didn't have that much knowledge and wisdom. There was no kind of viciousness. There was no necessarily lack of sincerity, just lack of knowledge and wisdom. But some people, no, they were very clever and they were hiding behind such people and basically misusing some people's candid love, because if they were giving very high position to Ahlul Bayt above human beings, then somehow they themselves could have also something in between. They were not saying we are the same, but anyway, they could also be people who are higher than ordinary people. And they could also gain some kind of support and followership for themselves. For example, in the book, people like Abul Khattab, Mughayrat ibn Sa'id are mentioned, who were some of the leaders of this kind of attitude. Sometimes they believed that Imams were, na'udhu billah, God, or God has inhabited in them, things like this. And sometimes also they were saying that some of the religious concepts are very symbolic, so that people should not worry that much about these concepts. This also could be dangerous. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam very much stood against this. As I said in the last session, Ahlul Bayt, when it comes to non-Shia, generally are very flexible, very lenient, very supportive of attempts to keep relations good. But zealots are different, Qulat are different, because they are trying to attribute themselves to the school of Ahlul Bayt, and they cause lots of problems inside and outside. Imam Raza alayhi salam says that some of the simple people, when they saw extraordinary acts from Imams, they thought maybe these people are, above human level. But these are simple-minded people. But some people, as I said, are very, and today also we have to be careful. Maybe there are vicious people that they try to claim such things. In a letter to Abul Khattab, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam questioned him for saying that salat, fasting are not to be taken as literally indicating some wajib or prohibition of, for example, drinking should not be taken literally. It should seem symbolic. Imam questioned this and said that part of the school of Ahlul Bayt is to be very committed to observing these kind of Islamic instructions and commands. These people not only were damaging the Shia from inside, but they were also damaging the reputation of the Shia and giving chance to people to misunderstand or to accuse them. Even if you read books of some non-Shia, some, for example, Sunni historians, you see sometimes even they have difficulty in understanding what Ghulat said and what is the mainstream. Maybe some people have their own agenda here, but some of them are maybe just naive, not experienced. So they see someone says, I'm Shia, and says something like this, they think all the Shia are like this. Always these people who are exaggerating or radicals, they can cause misunderstanding inside and misrepresentation outside. So it's very difficult. And even when imams were sometimes, taking position against them, some of the leaders of ghulat were playing a kind of politics. They say, imam has to say this in front of others. Otherwise, he himself thinks the same way. They tried, stop people changing from them to the mainstream. Sometimes also they mobilize people to uprise against Khalifa. And for example, there was a case that apart from one person, all of them were killed because they were doing political things. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, referring to followers of Abu al-Khattab and other ghulat, said to Mufaddal ibn Umar Ju'fi, the same Mufaddal who has narrated the Kitab of Tawheed, O Mufazzal, don't sit and meet ghulat, don't eat with them, don't drink with them, means like tea for example, don't shake hand with them. Someone like Imam Sadiq, who was very much, as I said, encouraging people to meet even non-Shia, non-Muslims, but when it comes to ghulat, he says, don't eat with them, don't drink with them, don't shake hand with them. And also he was very much concerned about the youths. He was saying that be careful that these people don't deceive your youths. They are worst enemies of Allah. They lower the position of Allah and they claim deity for servants of Allah. Today we also should be very careful about some people that in the name of Shia, they may attract the youths towards their radical ideas. One of the policies of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was to ask everyone to bring their arguments around the centrality of the Quran. If ghulat say something, ask them for Quranic support for that. If something contradicts Quran, don't accept. Because these ghulat could not bring, Quranic references. They were, maybe referring to some hadiths which could be understood different way, or some hadiths which were not genuine and authentic. So although we don't have any sect or any organized group as ghulat today, but some of the traces of their ideas could be sensed here or there. We have to be very careful. Okay, then we have a discussion about martyrdom of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Apart from very a small group, for example, maybe not even few, just for example, maybe people like Abu Zuhra, Muhammad Abu Zuhra, who is a contemporary writer, and he says Imam Sadiq was not killed by Mansur. Mansur Dawaniqi, the Abbasid Caliph, was himself very sad that even Imam Sadiq was killed. So apart from this, you find that historians, Sunni Shia, they talk about martyrdom and murder of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam by the command of Mansur in the year 148 after Hijrah in the holy city of Medina. Of course, in the case of Imam Reza, we have this. In the case of Imam Kazim, in the case of Imam Sadiq, that when the Caliph commands the Imam to be killed, later they don't say, we did it, or we are, happy. Many times they cried in front of public, they were holding maybe even majalis. They didn't want to give this impression to people that they did it, or they are happy. Others did it, but they are happy. No, they try to say we are very sad, we love them, etc. So Mansur did the same, but he was himself behind this. One of the things that we find is that Mansur killed many Alawites, and he was very clearly enemies of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Tabari, for example, in his history, says that one day Imam Sadiq sent Mu'attab, who was his servant, to Malik ibn Anas to discuss with him few things. Mansur arrested Mu'attab and wiped him 1,000 times till he died. It's a servant of Imam Sadiq, has just met a great scholar, which is not also Shia, but he was arrested and beaten to death. Imam himself many times was arrested by Umayyads, by Abbasids, but anyway, finally he was poisoned and passed away in the year 148 in Medina and was buried in Baqi. Okay. Now, some of the things about a spiritual and ethical life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. One of the companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, one day I had a kind of argument, quarrel with my mother, and I spoke rudely with my mother. Next day when I went to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, before I said anything, Imam said, what did you say to your mother? Why you spoke rudely to your mother? Don't you know how she basically gave you birth, gave you life? So never do this again. The second story is that Abu Ja'far Khathami says, Imam Sadiq gave me a bundle, a small pack of money. Not a small money, but I mean the pack was small. And said, give this to one of Bani Hashim, but don't tell it is from me. So he says, when I gave this to that person, he said, may Allah give, blessing to the person who sends me money. Every now and then, through people, he sends me money, which is enough for 1 year. But Ja'far ibn Muhammad has lots of money and doesn't give me even 1 dirham. Not knowing that it's from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. But for some reason, Imam didn't want him to know that it's from him. Maybe Imam didn't want him to feel embarrassed or whatever. The third story, which is very sad but also very interesting, is that one day one of the Hujjaj who had gone to Medina slept. In the middle of night he woke up and didn't find his money. He looked around and found Imam Sadiq was in masjid saying his prayer. It was middle of the night. He didn't know Imam Sadiq. He went to him and he said, Na'udhu billah, you must have robbed my money because there is no one else. Imam very calmly said, how much was in your pack? He said, 1,000 dinar, golden coin. Imam took him to his own house and gave him 1,000 golden coin. When this man went to the place that he used to stay, he realized that no, his money was there, but he mistakenly thought it was robbed. So he went to masjid and found Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and apologized and said, please take back your money. Imam said, I don't take back. When I have given something, I don't take it back. And this man then asked other people, who was this person? They said, he's Ja'far ibn Muhammad. And he said, because he didn't know Imam, but he had heard about Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq. So he said, it's not surprising that they behave like this. But it's very interesting that Imams were not people of, fighting and quarreling, because you could have quarrels and, no, I have not done this, and no one, perhaps in Medina, would accept that that person, is robbed by Imam. But they didn't want to quarrel. One day, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam sent his servant for some work, and he was delaying. So Imam went after him and saw that he's sleeping. Somewhere outside home, he's sleeping. So Imam sat next to him and started cooling him with kind of fan. With his hand, he was trying to make him feel cool. Then, when he had enough sleeping and he woke up, then Imam said, by Allah, this is not right that you sleep during the night and during the day. Sleep during the night and during the day, do our work. But he didn't say this when he was sleeping. He tried to help him sleep, not to be even suffering from heat, but later he said this kindly to him. Sufyan al-Thawri says, I went to Ja'far ibn Muhammad and saw that he's pale. I asked him, why you are like this? He said, I had said to one of the servants that no one should go to the roof. Maybe not to disturb neighbors, whatever. One of these servants was taking one of my children to the roof. And when saw me, was afraid because I had told them not to go out on the roof. And he was afraid, and the child fell down and died. Imam is sad that his child has died. But it is his suffering. What makes him even more suffering is why this person so much was afraid of me. So Imam didn't want anyone to fear him. So told to the servant that don't worry and you are freed. These are, the people that are sources of rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we have some wise sayings of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. I just mentioned some of them so that inshallah we can start next session. the life of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Imam said to Zayd al-Shahham, famous hadith, say my salam to those who think they follow me and listen to me, and tell them I advise you to observe taqwa, to be truthful, to be trustworthy, to have long sajda, to be kind to your neighbors. This is the religion of the Prophet. Give the trust back to those who own, whether they are good or bad. With your neighbors, even if they are not Shia, have visitation, take part in their funerals, visit the ill people, observe their rights. If one of you is pious and honest and trustworthy and has good temper, people say he is Ja'fari. This makes me happy. They say this is Adabu Ja'far. Imam Sadiq has trained them like this. But if it is other than this, it would be a kind of disgrace for us. And they say this is the way their Imam has trained them. They would say again, Hada Adabu Ja'far. Then he said, by Allah, my father told me that in the past, if in a tribe there was one Shia, that one Shia in the whole tribe was the zina, adornment or beautification of the whole tribe. He was the most trustworthy person, the most honest person. He was a place that people could find, their refuge. They could, entrust him with their valuables. And if the whole members of the tribe were asked about that person, they would say, who is like him? He's the most trustworthy and the most honest person among us. So he says, Imam Baqir said Shia were like this, and he expects Shia to be like this. Abu Rabi' al-Shami says, I went to the house of Imam Sadiq, and house was full of people from Sham, from Khurasan, from other places. And he says, I didn't find any place to sit. Imam Sadiq said, O Shia of Ahlul Bayt, Al Muhammad, it's not one of us that when he gets angry, loses his control. The one that is not a good companion for those who meet, is not a good neighbor, for example. This is not one of us. As much as you can, have taqwa. In another hadith, Imam Sadiq said, whoever wants to see how much his salat has been beneficial, see how much salat has stopped him from doing bad things. And whoever wants to know his position with Allah must see what is the position of Allah with him. He also said Allah gave blessings, bounties to some people. They didn't thank. The blessings turned to burden for them. Allah gave musibah to some people and they were patient. They were turned into blessings. Someone said to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, please show me the way to reach goodness in dunya and akhirah, but briefly. And Imam said, don't tell lies. Finally, Imam Sadiq and unity and coexistence. So he used to say, never do something that because of you people will blame us. sometimes a bad child causes disgrace for the parents. Try to be a source of honor for the people that you associate themselves to, not a source of embarrassment and blame. Take part in the prayers of non-Shia. Visit the people who become ill. Take part in the funerals. And be careful not let them precede you in good actions. There's a competition. Every person should try to be better. Someone asked, what should we do with the people who are not Shia? Imam said, look at your Imams. How do they behave? Your Imams, go and visit them, take part in their funerals. If they need their testimony, they go and offer testimony. They give their trust back to them. So you should be the same. A person asked Imam Sadiq, some of the companions, in our neighborhood, in our local mosque, the Imam of Jama'ah is not from us. And he's an enemy, kind of hostile towards us. Imam said, his sins are not counted for you. If what you say is correct, going to that mosque is more important or more necessary for you than him. Try to be the first person who goes to the mosque and be the last person who comes out of the mosque. Have good akhlaq with people, good speech. For the sake of Allah, this is another hadith. For the sake of Allah, wish good for all creatures of Allah. And you would not meet Allah with any action better than this. Just wish good for everyone. And finally, Imam Sadiq says, said hadith that Rasulullah was asked, who is more loved by Allah, more lovable to Allah? And Rasulullah said, the one who is more beneficial for others. Hope, alhamdulillah, we finished this part. Inshallah, bi'iznillah, we continue with the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen.